May 1940, Berlin. Inside the Reich Air Ministry, Hermann Göring lowers an intelligence report onto his desk and laughs. The document summarizes a speech just delivered in Washington. President Franklin Roosevelt has asked Congress to prepare the United States for a war it has not yet entered. His demand is simple, and to Göring, ridiculous: 50,000 military aircraft every year. Göring barely hides his contempt. He scoffs that the Americans are desperate, bluffing with numbers meant to frighten Europe. They know nothing of real war production, he says. Aircraft are not automobiles. Assembly lines cannot simply be converted. Let them try. At this moment, Göring commands the most feared air force in the world. The Luftwaffe has torn open Poland, crushed France, and dominates the skies of Europe. Germany's enemies are collapsing. Victory appears inevitable. Across the Atlantic, the United States looks weak. In 1940, it has produced only a few thousand military aircraft in total. Many of its planes are outdated. Its army is small, its people divided. From Berlin, the idea that America could outproduce Germany is not just unlikely. It is laughable. What Göring does not understand, what he cannot understand, is that the war he believes he is winning has already begun to turn, not in the air, not on the battlefield, but in factories that are only just beginning to come alive. In 1940, the United States does not look like a nation preparing to fight a global war. On paper, America's military aviation is an afterthought. In all of 1939, U.S. factories produced just over 3,000 military aircraft. The Army Air Corps possesses fewer than 2,000 combat-ready planes, many of them slow, lightly armed, and already outdated by European standards. Compared to Germany, the imbalance is stark. The Luftwaffe fields modern fighters and bombers in the tens of thousands. Its pilots are combat-hardened. Its tactics have been tested in Spain, Poland, and France. Air power has become the decisive weapon of modern war, and Germany appears to have mastered it. America, by contrast, has spent the previous decade recovering from economic collapse. Factories are idle, skilled workers are scattered, military budgets have been minimal. Isolationism dominates public opinion. Few Americans believe another European war should involve them at all. When Roosevelt speaks of producing 50,000 aircraft per year, the reaction is not awe, but disbelief. Even America's allies are skeptical. Britain, already fighting for survival, quietly doubts whether such numbers are possible. Aircraft production is slow, complex, and precise. Planes are not built like cars. They require skilled labor, specialized tools, and intricate coordination across thousands of suppliers. A 14-fold increase in output sounds less like planning and more like fantasy. From Berlin, the conclusion is obvious. The United States lacks the experience, the urgency, and the discipline required for modern war. It is a consumer economy, not a military one. Its strength lies in comfort, not sacrifice. To Göring and the Nazi leadership, the numbers confirm what they already believe. America is too slow, too soft, and far too late. What they do not see is that weakness, in this case, is an illusion, created by a nation that has not yet revealed how fast it can move when it finally decides to act. While Göring laughs in Berlin, a very different kind of war preparation is already underway in the United States, led by a man whose name means nothing to the Nazi leadership. William Knudsen is not a general. He has never flown an aircraft. He does not wear a uniform. He is an engineer. Born in Denmark and raised in America, Knudsen rose through the automobile industry to become president of General Motors. He understands factories the way battlefield commanders understand terrain. To him, production is not an abstract concept. It is a system, one that can be measured, broken apart, rebuilt, and accelerated. When Roosevelt asks who could possibly deliver 50,000 aircraft a year, the answer is immediate. Not an admiral, not a general, but Knudsen. He agrees to serve his adopted country for $1 a year. Knudsen's assessment of American aircraft production is blunt. The problem is not intelligence, it is method. Aircraft are being built like handcrafted machines, slowly, expensively, and in small batches. Every plane is treated as unique. Every delay ripples through the system. Knudsen believes this approach is obsolete. Automobiles, he argues, are more complex than airplanes in one crucial way. They must be produced flawlessly, millions of times, by workers who may have never seen the finished product. Aircraft can be built the same way, if the industry is willing to abandon tradition. Instead of perfecting individual aircraft, Knudsen focuses on perfecting the process, break planes into sub-assemblies, standardize parts, train workers for repetition, not mastery. Accept small flaws early in exchange for speed and scale. Most radical of all, he believes learning matters more than starting strong. Mistakes will happen. Planes will be rebuilt. Schedules will collapse. But every failure will teach the system how to move faster next time. This is not how Germany builds aircraft. The Luftwaffe relies on skilled craftsmen, precision workshops, and tightly controlled production. It produces excellent machines, but slowly and in limited numbers. Knudsen is building something entirely different, not better airplanes, but a machine designed to produce airplanes relentlessly, endlessly, and in numbers that Göring cannot yet imagine. While Germany prepares for war with what it already has, America is quietly preparing to become something it has never been before: an arsenal. Germany does not lack information about American industry. What it lacks is the willingness to believe it. Throughout the late 1930s, German military attachés stationed in Washington send regular reports back to Berlin. They describe factory expansions, new contracts, and a level of coordination unlike anything seen before in the United States. Automobile plants are being surveyed, tooling is being redesigned, supply chains are quietly mapped. The most persistent warnings come from General Friedrich von Boedeker, Germany's military attaché to the United States. From his post in Washington, he watches the transformation begin. He tours factories, he speaks with executives, he sees production lines lengthening, shifts multiplying, and workers being trained at a pace that alarms him. In late 1940, Boedeker sends a blunt assessment to Berlin. American war production, he warns, will reach unimaginable heights, not eventually, soon. The reports reach the highest levels of the German command. They are dismissed. In Berlin, the numbers do not fit existing beliefs. American factories, analysts argue, are inefficient. Labor is undisciplined. Democracy is slow. Any expansion must be exaggerated, any projection inflated by optimism and fear. Some reports mention factories operating around the clock, 3 shifts, continuous output. German analysts assume propaganda or misunderstanding. Others describe women entering aircraft plants in large numbers. This is interpreted as desperation, not capacity. What the intelligence community is seeing is a system reorganizing itself at speed. What Berlin chooses to see is weakness. The warnings are filed away unanswered. No strategic adjustments are made. No production assumptions are revised. Germany continues to plan its air war based on a future in which American industry remains marginal. The danger is not that Germany lacks data. The danger is that it believes it already knows the truth. And so, while American factories accelerate quietly and relentlessly, German leaders reassure themselves that nothing fundamental has changed. They will not realize their mistake until the sky itself begins to fill. At the highest levels of the Third Reich, intelligence does not fail because it is wrong. It fails because it contradicts belief. Adolf Hitler and Hermann Göring do not see the United States as a serious opponent. In their worldview, history is driven by race, willpower, and obedience, not factories and logistics. America, in their minds, is a nation of mixed peoples, distracted by comfort, incapable of discipline or sacrifice. When reports describe American industry expanding at unprecedented speed, they are filtered through this ideology. The facts are acknowledged, but their meaning is dismissed. Hitler rants about American racial decay. Göring mocks the idea that a democracy could ever mobilize efficiently. A society that allows dissent, labor unions, and civilian control cannot possibly match the output of a totalitarian state, at least not in their weak imagination. Even the composition of the American workforce reinforces their delusion. As men are drafted, women move into aircraft factories in enormous numbers. To German analysts, this confirms weakness. Real war production, they believe, requires male discipline and centralized control. They cannot conceive that voluntary participation might outperform coercion. When intelligence reports mention factories operating day and night, German planners assume exaggeration. When American output rises month after month, they attribute it to temporary surges that must soon collapse under inefficiency and chaos. No serious effort is made to match the scale. No restructuring of German production is ordered. The Luftwaffe continues to rely on skilled craftsmen, small workshops, and limited batch production, methods that produce excellent aircraft, but slowly. Germany believes quality will outweigh quantity. It is a fatal assumption, because this war will not be decided by which aircraft is better in a single engagement. It will be decided by which nation can replace losses, absorb mistakes, and keep building, without pause, without exhaustion. By choosing ideology over evidence, Germany locks itself into a future it can no longer escape, a future in which the numbers will only move in one direction. In April 1941, on a stretch of farmland outside Detroit, the American production miracle nearly collapses before it begins. Ford Motor Company announces plans for a single factory unlike anything the world has ever seen. It will be called Willow Run. Under one roof, Ford intends to build heavy bombers faster than any aircraft manufacturer in history. Not one per day, not even one per shift, one per hour. The promise borders on insanity. No factory has ever attempted to mass produce a four-engine bomber. The aircraft chosen, the B-24 Liberator, contains nearly 500,000 individual parts. Its design is complex, its tolerances unforgiving. Construction begins immediately. Concrete is poured at record speed. Assembly lines stretch nearly a mile. Thousands of workers are hired, many of them with no experience in aviation at all. And then reality hits. The first bombers that roll off the line are disasters. Parts do not fit. Wiring is misrouted, rivets are misaligned, entire aircraft must be stripped down and rebuilt by hand. Quality failure rates soar, production slows to a crawl. By early 1943, Willow Run is producing only a handful of bombers each month, nowhere near what was promised. Newspapers mock the plant openly. Workers joke that the name doesn't mean Willow Run, but will it run? Critics declare the experiment a failure. Some call it proof that Göring was right all along, that aircraft cannot be built like automobiles, that mass production will destroy precision. Inside the factory, however, the reaction is different. Ford engineers do not abandon the project, they dissect it. Every failure is cataloged, every bottleneck mapped, every error traced back to its source. The bombers are not the problem, the process is. Willow Run is not failing because the idea is wrong. It is failing because the system is not finished learning how to move at the speed the war now demands. And while Germany believes these failures confirm American weakness, the most dangerous phase of the factory's life is just beginning. Because failure in this system is not an end, it is instruction. At Willow Run, failure does not trigger retreat. It triggers redesign. Ford's engineers stop treating the bomber as a single object and begin breaking it apart. The B-24 is dismantled on paper into thousands of sub-assemblies, nose sections, wings, fuselage panels, wiring harnesses, each one simplified, standardized, and rebuilt to move independently down the line. Instead of craftsmen following the aircraft begins to follow the process. New tools are invented on the EEO spot. Riveting guns are redesigned to reduce fatigue. Fixtures are built so parts can only fit one way. Wiring is pre-assembled instead of routed by hand. Tasks that once required skilled specialists are reduced to repeatable motions that can be taught in hours, not years. Mistakes still happen. Designs change constantly, hundreds of modifications in a single year. But now, changes no longer stop production. They are absorbed into it. Workers who had never seen an airplane learn one task, then another, then another. Supervisors track delays in minutes, not days. Problems are reported immediately, not buried. When a bottleneck appears, it is attacked from every angle until it disappears. Most importantly, the factory never stops. 3 shifts run around the clock. When one crew leaves, another steps in without slowing the line. Knowledge accumulates. Every hour makes the next hour faster. This is where America's advantage begins to reveal itself. Germany builds aircraft through mastery, by relying on highly trained craftsmen producing small numbers of excellent machines. Willow Run builds aircraft through learning, by allowing thousands of ordinary workers to improve the system together, day after day. The German system resists change because change threatens precision. The American system thrives on change because speed demands it. By mid-1943, production at Willow Run begins to climb sharply. Monthly output doubles, then doubles again. The early chaos fades, the line steadies. The factory finds its rhythm. What once looked like proof of failure now becomes proof of something far more dangerous. America is not just catching up, it is accelerating, faster than its enemy can adapt, faster than German planners believe is even possible. And Willow Run is only one factory. The Luftwaffe is about to face the consequences of an opponent that learns at industrial scale. By early 1944, Willow Run no longer looks like an experiment, it looks like a weapon. Inside the vast factory, the assembly line never sleeps. Bombers move steadily forward, hour after hour, day and night. The chaos of the early months has been replaced by routine. Problems still occur, but they no longer slow the line. They are corrected while production continues. Then, the numbers cross a threshold that changes the war. In April 1944, Willow Run produces more than 400 B-24 Liberators in a single month. At peak output, a completed bomber rolls off the line every 63 minutes, 24 hours a day. No German factory comes close. In fact, this single American plant is now producing heavy bombers faster than the entire German aviation industry combined. Not in theory, in reality. Each aircraft carries massive defensive firepower, advanced navigation equipment, and crews trained to survive repeated missions. Losses that would cripple another air force become tolerable, almost routine, because replacements are already moving down the line. German intelligence begins to sense something is wrong, but the scale is still impossible to grasp. Reports describe endless bomber streams, formations so large they stretch from horizon to horizon. Analysts struggle to reconcile what pilots are seeing with what Berlin believes is possible. The truth is simple and devastating. Willow Run is not exceptional because it builds better bombers. It is exceptional because it never stops building them. While Germany measures production in workshops in months, America measures it in minutes and miles of moving steel. And Willow Run is only one node in a vast industrial network that now spans the continent. At this moment, quietly, without a single announcement, the air war is effectively decided. The Luftwaffe will continue to fight, German pilots will continue to die, new aircraft designs will still appear, but the arithmetic has turned irreversible. From this point forward, every German loss is permanent, every American loss is temporary, and the factory outside Detroit has become as decisive as any battlefield in Europe. The first Germans to understand what is happening are not planners in Berlin, they are pilots. In late 1942 and early 1943, Luftwaffe fighter units begin encountering American aircraft in North Africa. At first, the Americans are dismissed as inexperienced, their formations are clumsy, their tactics imperfect, losses are high. But something feels wrong. Every week there are more of them. German pilots begin to notice that American losses no longer seem to matter. Bombers are shot down in large numbers, yet the next mission arrives with the same strength, or greater. Squadrons that should have been crippled simply reappear, fully replaced. By 1943, this realization spreads to the skies over Europe. American bomber formations grow larger, denser, and more disciplined. They arrive in daylight deliberately, forcing combat again and again. Even when missions are costly, the pressure never eases. The stream does not thin. It thickens. One German pilot later recalls seeing bomber formations that seem to stretch from horizon to horizon. Others note the same unsettling pattern. Shoot down one bomber, and two more take its place days later. This is not tactical superiority, it is industrial superiority. German pilots begin to grasp the implication before their commanders do. They are not fighting an enemy that can be worn down through attrition. They are fighting one that replaces losses faster than they can be inflicted. The air war has crossed an invisible threshold. Every German aircraft lost now represents weeks or months of production. Every trained pilot lost is irreplaceable. Experience bleeds away with each engagement. For the Americans, replacement aircraft arrive continuously. New crews step forward in steady waves. Training pipelines remain full. The machine keeps moving. By the time German pilots fully understand this shift, it is already too late. The future of the war is no longer being decided by who flies better or fights harder on a given day. It is being decided by which side can keep showing up tomorrow. And only one side now has that guarantee. In February 1944, the illusion of balance finally collapses. For years, Germany has believed that American air power can be blunted, shot down faster than it can be rebuilt. Big Week proves that belief is wrong. Between February 20th and 25th, American and Allied air forces launch a sustained assault against the heart of German aircraft production. Thousands of bombers and fighters strike factories, airfields, and assembly plants across the Reich. The targets are not cities, they are systems. The Luftwaffe responds with everything it has left. German fighters rise again and again, intercepting the bomber streams in desperate waves. The fighting is brutal. Aircraft fall from the sky on both sides. Losses are heavy, but the balance is no longer equal. Germany can still replace aircraft, barely. What it cannot replace are pilots. Each interception costs the Luftwaffe something far more valuable than machines. Veteran pilots hardened by years of combat are lost in growing numbers. Their replacements arrive with fewer hours, less training, and almost no margin for error. By contrast, American losses, while severe, are absorbed without hesitation. Destroyed bombers are replaced within weeks. Squadrons refit and return. The pressure never lifts. When Big Week ends, the numbers tell a brutal story. Germany is losing aircraft faster than it can produce them, but more importantly, it is losing experienced pilots at a rate it can never recover from. The Luftwaffe's core is hollowed out in a matter of days. From this point forward, German fighter units are shadows of what they once were. They still fly, they still fight, but the edge is gone. Air superiority no longer shifts back and forth. It settles. The skies over Europe begin to belong to the side that can afford to lose and keep coming. After Big Week, there is no path back to parity, only a slow, accelerating descent into arithmetic defeat. As the skies slip beyond control, Germany turns inward, searching for solutions that no longer exist. Göring authorizes a radical shift in production. Aircraft factories are broken apart and scattered across the countryside. Assembly lines are pushed underground, hidden in tunnels, caves, and abandoned mines. The goal is survival. Protect production from bombing at any cost. The result is catastrophe. Dispersed factories lose efficiency immediately. Components must be transported across bombed rail lines. Coordination collapses. Quality control erodes. Engines arrive that do not fit. Airframes fail inspections. Delays multiply. To keep the system running, Germany turns to forced labor on a massive scale. Prisoners are worked to exhaustion in underground facilities, starving, beaten, and dying by the tens of thousands. Sabotage becomes inevitable. Precision disappears. Instead of accelerating production, the system chokes itself. At the same time, German leadership places its faith in technology. New aircraft designs promise salvation. Jet fighters emerge that are faster than anything the Allies possess. On paper, they are revolutionary. In reality, they arrive too late and in too few numbers. Jet engines fail after a handful of hours. Fuel is scarce. Spare parts are unavailable. Pilots lack training. Entire squadrons are grounded waiting for components that never arrive. Germany invents the future, but cannot manufacture the present. While American factories absorb change without slowing, German production collapses under its own complexity. Each new innovation adds strain instead of strength. Each attempt to hide from the bombers makes the system weaker. By 1944, the contrast is absolute. America produces aircraft in open factories, visible from the air, daring the sea as an enemy to stop them. Germany buries its factories underground and still cannot keep pace. The desperation is unmistakable now. The war in the air is no longer being fought between pilots. It is being fought between systems, and one of them is breaking apart. In May 1945, Hermann Göring is taken into American custody. The man who once commanded the most feared air force in the world is now a prisoner. He arrives with trunks of uniforms, medals, and personal belongings, still carrying himself as a Reichsmarschall, still convinced that Germany was defeated by circumstance rather than failure. At first, Göring remains defiant. During interrogations, he insists that German technology was superior, that the Luftwaffe was tactically brilliant, that Germany lost only because it was overwhelmed by numbers, not outmatched in skill or design. The Americans do not argue. Instead, they show him the numbers. Charts are laid out detailing aircraft production year by year. Factory. Output curves rise sharply on one side of the page and flatten on the other. Göring studies them closely, recalculating ratios in his head, searching for errors. Then he is shown the footage. Endless American assembly lines, bombers moving forward without pause, wings, fuselages, engines, each flowing into place with mechanical certainty. Willow Run appears on the screen, its mile-long line feeding aircraft into the sky at a pace Göring had once declared impossible. The effect is immediate. The bravado fades, the certainty weakens. Göring begins asking questions, not about tactics or dogfights, but about logistics, about training pipelines, about how the Americans supplied forces across two oceans while maintaining uninterrupted production at home. He admits what he had never allowed himself to consider. He knew American industry was powerful. He had assumed it would be slow, disorganized, limited by democracy and distance. What he sees now terrifies him. Single American factories, he realizes, had produced more aircraft than entire segments of the German Air Force. Losses that would have crippled Germany were absorbed without hesitation. The scale was not just greater, it was incomprehensible. For the first time since 1940, Göring stops defending his decisions. The illusions that once protected him are gone. All that remains is the mathematics, and the understanding that the war was never lost in the air. It was lost long before, inside factories he had chosen to laugh at instead of fear. As the interrogations continue, Hermann Göring's certainty dissolves into calculation. Again and again he returns to the same subject, not strategy, not battles, but production. He asks how many aircraft the United States built in a single year, how many engines, how many factories were operating at once, how long it took to replace losses that Germany had struggled to absorb. When the answers come, he is silent. He admits that he had always known. American industrial potential was great. What he had never imagined was the speed, the scale, the execution. 100-fold increase in aircraft production in less than 4 years, he says, had seemed physically impossible. Yet the evidence is undeniable. American factories had not merely outproduced Germany, they had outproduced the entire Axis combined. By 1944, the United States alone was building more aircraft each year than Germany managed throughout the entire war. Göring fixates on Willow Run. That single factory, he says, produced more bombers than his entire force at its peak. One plant, staffed by workers who had never built an aircraft before the war, had broken the back of the Luftwaffe. He speaks with particular disbelief about logistics. Supplying armies across two oceans while maintaining uninterrupted production at home was something Germany had never been able to do even over short distances. The concept itself, he admits, had been beyond his understanding. Slowly, the conclusion forms. Germany had not been defeated by better pilots or even better machines. It had been defeated by a system that rewarded adaptability over obedience, cooperation over coercion, and scale over ideology. Quality without quantity, Göring realizes, was meaningless in total war. By the time he reaches this admission, there is no anger left in his voice, only resignation. The war he thought would be decided by air battles and technological brilliance had been decided elsewhere, by numbers that could not be argued with and factories that never stopped moving. The laughter of 1940 is gone. In its place is a truth he can no longer escape. The war in the air was not decided by a single battle or even by a single year. It was decided by a transformation. Between 1940 and 1944, the United States did more than build aircraft. It rebuilt itself. A nation that had once produced a few thousand military planes a year began producing nearly 100,000 annually. Bombers, fighters, transports, faster than losses could ever consume them. This victory did not belong only to generals or pilots. It belonged to factory workers who had never seen an airplane before the war, to women who learned to rivet, inspect, wire, and assemble with precision that rivaled any craftsman, to engineers who redesigned tools overnight, to systems that absorbed mistakes and became stronger because of them. 2 million Americans worked in aircraft production at its peak. They were not coerced. They were not forced underground. They volunteered, learned, adapted, and improved together. The factories they built did not disappear when the war ended. The techniques pioneered for bombers reshaped global manufacturing. Assembly line innovation carried America into the post-war world. The engineers who solved production bottlenecks would later build rockets. The workers who mastered precision would help define an era of prosperity. Germany, by contrast, had relied on fear, ideology, and control. Its factories fragmented, its labor was enslaved, its production collapsed under secrecy and coercion. The difference was not simply economic, it was philosophical. The arsenal of democracy proved that free societies, when threatened, could mobilize faster and more effectively than any dictatorship, that cooperation could outperform command, that numbers, when guided by adaptability, could become decisive. Hermann Göring laughed at the idea of 50,000 American aircraft a year. America answered by building twice that number. By the time the laughter faded, the war had already been lost, not in the skies over Europe, but on factory floors he had never understood. If this story was worth remembering, take a moment to remember the people who fought it without ever firing a weapon. Because in the end, it was not only bombs and bullets that won the war. It was production.